Every morning, something happens to you that you have never been able to explain. You are gone, completely gone. No sense of time, no sense of self, no awareness that you even existed. And then, without warning, you were back. The room, the light, the weight of your body, you. But here is the question that neuroscientists have been quietly wrestling with for decades, and the answer is far stranger than you expect. What if the you that came back this morning is not the same you that went to sleep last night? What if waking up is not a return at all, but a construction? What if consciousness is not something you have, but something your brain performs fresh every single time? This is not philosophy, this is neuroscience. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your skull every morning, you will never think about yourself the same way again. Start with what sleep actually is, not rest, not pause. Sleep is one of the most violent and dramatic transformations your brain undergoes on a daily basis. Within minutes of falling asleep, the thalamus, the brain's central relay station, the structure that routes sensory information from the outside world into conscious awareness, begins to shut its gates. Signals from your eyes, your ears, your skin stop reaching the cortex. The outside world goes dark, not because it disappeared, because your brain decided to stop listening. Then something stranger begins. The brainstem floods your motor cortex with inhibitory signals, paralyzing your muscles. Your body becomes temporarily unable to move. This is not a malfunction, it is protection. Because what happens next, the dreaming, the processing, the wholesale reconstruction of memory and emotion, is so neurologically intense that if your body were not locked down, you would act it out. You would run, fight, cry, speak. The paralysis is the only thing keeping you still. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker, who spent decades studying sleep at the University of California, Berkeley, describes this nightly process as nothing less than emotional surgery. During REM sleep, the brain replays the day's experiences but strips away the stress hormones that accompanied them the first time. You re-experience what happened. You do not re-experience how it felt to be threatened by it. The memory is preserved, the wound is softened. You wake up with the file updated and the pain turned down. This is why a night of sleep changes how you feel about a problem. Not because you stopped thinking about it, because your brain worked on it all night invisibly and handed you back a different version of it in the morning. But here is where it gets deeply strange. Consciousness, the sense that there is a you experiencing things right now, does not simply resume when you wake up. It is rebuilt from scratch every time. Neuroscientist Anil Seth at the University of Sussex has spent years studying what he calls the controlled hallucination of conscious experience. His argument, built on decades of experimental data, is radical but increasingly hard to dismiss. He says that what you experience as reality is not the world itself. It is your brain's best guess about the world, constructed from incomplete sensory data and weighted heavily by expectation and memory. You are never perceiving reality directly. You are perceiving a model of reality that your brain generates and continuously updates. When you are asleep, that model shuts down. The hallucination pauses. When you wake up, it does not pick up where it left off. It boots up again. It gathers incoming signals, light levels, sounds, the pressure of your body against the mattress, and it starts rebuilding the model. Who am I? Where am I? What day is it? What needs to happen today? These are not questions you consciously ask. They are computation is what makes it uncomfortable. That scenario is a slightly exaggerated version of what already happens. The you that went to sleep last night had a conscious experience that ended. The you that woke up this morning has memories of that conscious experience, but does not have the experience itself. The thread was cut. What you have is the record of a person who no longer exists in quite the same form. Neuroscientist Christoph Koch, who spent decades collaborating with Francis Crick on the search for the neural basis of consciousness, described waking as a kind of resurrection. The brain does not simply resume, it reconstructs. And reconstruction, unlike resumption, always involves interpretation. always involves selection, always involves at some level creation. You are, in a very real sense, a story your brain tells about itself. And every morning the story begins again. Think about this in the context of your own life. The version of you that wakes up after a devastating loss feels like a different person than the one who went to sleep the night before. The version of you that wakes up after a long illness, recovered, feels reborn. The version of you at 40, waking up, feels discontinuous in important ways from the version of you at 15. These are not metaphors. These are reports of something real. The self is not fixed. It is updated, revised, and occasionally overwritten. What your brain is doing every night is not simply maintaining a stable you, it is deciding what version of you wakes up tomorrow. Sleep deprivation research makes this painfully concrete. When humans are kept awake beyond 40 hours, the first thing to degrade is not memory, not motor control, not language. It is the sense of self. Sufferers describe a feeling of watching themselves from outside, of no longer being sure who is having the thoughts, of the narrator going quiet. The self, it turns out, is not a bedrock. It is a process. And like any process, it requires maintenance. It requires the nightly shutdown and reboot to stay coherent. What you call you is closer to a flame than a stone. It requires constant fuel, constant conditions, constant renewal. Let those conditions fail and the flame does not weaken. It goes out. This should be terrifying. For a moment, let it be. Let yourself sit with the fact that the continuity of yourself, the thread you assume runs unbroken from birth to right now, has been cut every single night for your entire life. That you have already undergone thousands of these small disappearances, that the you who read the first line of this today is not, in any strict neurological sense, the same you who will read the last, and then notice something else. You are still here. The story continued. Whatever it is that makes you you, the constellation of memories, values, habits, fears, loves, and patterns of attention, it survived the interruption. It came back. Not because consciousness is indestructible, but because the brain is extraordinarily good at rebuilding it. Because identity, however fragile its philosophical foundations, is practically robust. The reconstruction is so fast and so accurate that the seam is invisible. You never notice the cut. You only ever experience the continuation. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the self was never meant to be a fixed thing. Maybe it was always meant to be regenerated, cleaned, updated, revised each time the sun came up. Ancient humans who slept well were sharper, calmer, better able to read the faces of allies and enemies. The brain that rebooted cleanly every morning was the brain that survived. The identity that could be rebuilt was more resilient than one that could not be interrupted. You are not a continuous thing that sleeps. You are a recurring thing that wakes. Every morning, your brain performs an act of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary speed and hands you back yourself, slightly updated, ready to go again. The gift is not that you never disappear. The gift is that something always comes back. So tonight, when the light goes out and the thalamus closes its gates and the model of reality your brain has been running all day finally shuts down, that is not an ending. It is a preparation for someone who will wake up tomorrow morning, look around the room, and feel, without question, like you.